So we now have a quorum of the Dartmouth Conservation Commission, and I'm opening the meeting of the Dartmouth Conservation Commission for Tuesday, June 11, 2024. This meeting has been properly noticed on the town website, and we are conducting this meeting remotely as a result of Governor Healy's signing into law on March 29, 2023, the further extension for hybrid remote meeting options for municipalities. And then she extended that option until March 31, 2025. This meeting is available to the public. It was published with the meeting ID and passcode, and it is accessible for those who participate with either the raise your hand feature, or as I like to say, wave your hand if all else fails. I'd ask those that aren't speaking to mute themselves during the presentations so that ambient noise doesn't interfere with their presentation. That being said, we'll move on now to our administrative portion. The first administrative matter is the approval of the minutes of May 14, 2024. May I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Seconded motion. Roll call vote. Rich?
Say, me, yes, thanks, yes.
Yeah. Nat?
Yes.
Liz?
You're muted, Liz.
Yep.
Yes.
And Joe?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. That motion passes unanimously. The second administrative item is to approve the field trip reports of May 28, 2024. May I have a motion to that effect, please?
So moved.
Second.
Seconded motion. Roll call vote. Richard?
Yes.
Nat?
Yes.
Liz?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. That motion passes unanimously. The final administrative matter is to receive the minutes of May 28, 2024 meeting. May I have a motion to that effect?
So moved. Second.
Second.
Seconded motion. Roll call vote. Richard?
Yes.
Nat?
Yes.
Liz?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That motion passes unanimously. We're moving now to our field trip reports. And our first field trip report is a request for a certificate of compliance. It's on DEP file 15-2593, RCC 24-16. It's from Joe D'Souza to construct a single-family dwelling with associated utilities and grading within the 100-foot buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland. It's on land described as map 119, lots 1, 2-11, and 2-12. It's otherwise known as 644 Russell's Mills Road. Mark, what is staff's recommendation on this request for certificate of compliance?
Oh, it's interesting because the lot used to be referred to as 644 Russell's Mills Road. Before the record its actual address now is 1 Rebecca Road. It is a corner lot. Rebecca is a cul-de-sac off of Russell's Mills, just to the east of Bakerville. Having said that, just for the record, and I know you read it correctly as it was filed, staff is recommending a complete certificate of compliance. We conducted a site visit a week ago tomorrow and everything looked fine.
Thank you. Does any commissioner have any question of Mark? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to issue a complete certificate of compliance on DEP file 15-2593.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded motion. Roll call vote. Richard?
Yes.
Nat?
Yes.
Liz?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. That motion passes unanimously. Got my tongue twisted there. The second field trip report is also a request for certificate of compliance. In this case, it's on DEP file 15-2691, RCC 24-17, and it's from George Verissimo to construct a single-family home and provide utility connections within land subject to flooding. The land is described as map 144, lot 64, It's otherwise known as 85 McCabe Street. Mark, what is staff's recommendation on this request?
Yeah, just a little step back. If you recall this, we had an order of conditions. There was some concern about the accuracy of the survey. Steve Giosa came in and found that there were some inaccuracies, presented us with a modified plan. We approved that modified plan, and staff is proposing a complete COC as the on-site conditions do accurately mimic the modified plan as approved by this commission.
Thank you, Mark. Does any commissioner have any question? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to issue a complete certificate of compliance on DEP file 15-2691.
So
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 moved.
moved.
Second,
Second.
we have a seconded motion. We'll do a roll call vote now. And Richard,
Yes.
Nat,
Yes.
Liz,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
and I'm yes as well. That motion passes unanimously. The third field trip report is a request for certificate of compliance on DEP file 15-2663. That's RCC 2417. I'm sorry, I misspoke. That's RCC 2418 from David and Wendy Dodson to address a violation that involved cutting trees within BVW in the buffer zone to BVW and within land subject to coastal storm flowage. Also proposed is the removal of remaining storm damaged trees, cutting trees and invasive plant species on land described as map 113, lots 28 and 29. It's also known as 23 High Street. Mark, what is staff's request on this?
Before I give you the recommendation, Jim is now entered, so we have 6 members.
Hi, Jim.
Hi. Sorry, I'm
It's
late.
okay, you're here.
Again, last Wednesday, we conducted a site visit and observed that the plantings were appropriately done and very healthy. The cleanup was done in accordance with what was agreed upon, and therefore staff is recommending a complete certificate of compliance for 15-2663.
Thank you, Mark. Does any commissioner have a question of Mark? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to issue a complete certificate of compliance on DEP file 15-2663.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second.
The seconded motion, roll call vote. Richard,
Yes.
Nat,
Yes.
Liz,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. That motion passes unanimously. The fourth field trip report.
gentlemen.
You're welcome. The fourth field trip report is a request for certificate of compliance, the DEP file 15-2129, RCC 24-19, from Mario Denise to construct a parking lot within the 100-foot buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland. It's on land described as map 84, lot 8-17. It's otherwise known as 5 Castaldi Drive. Mark, what is staff's recommendation on this request?
I would like to request that the chair recognize, I believe, Mr. Paul Carlson from Insight Engineering. He may have some updated information. We were prepared to recommend a complete certificate of compliance, except we noticed that we did not have the recorded book and page of the order of conditions on the form. And we can't really proceed with that. So I spoke to Mr. Dennis yesterday, and he said he was going to work on it. And I believe Paul Paulson might have some information for us. So I would ask the chair to allow him to speak.
Very good. Mr. Carlson, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mark. As of this time, to your point, Mark, I do not have record of the order of conditions as recorded as of yet. I don't know that I believe it was always forwarded to the client. I'm not sure what ultimately happened. So we are in the process of figuring out where and what happened, and then ultimately addressing that matter.
Can I ask a question? Has anyone checked the indices at the Registry of Deeds to see whether or not it was ever recorded?
If you don't mind, the attorney, Peter Salino is also, on this call,
Okay.
and he might be able to answer that if you don't mind.
I don't mind at all. Peter, go ahead.
Yes. Hi, Mike. How are you? Members of the board, for purposes of the record, my name is Peter Solino. I'm a lawyer with offices at 550 Locust Street in Fall River. We're before you tonight because this matter was brought up incident to a real estate closing in which I represent the seller, Mr. Denise. Mr. Carlson was the engineer on the project. To answer the question directly, the title examination, Mike, does not show that this document was recorded. Michael Medeiros represents the buyer, and he provided me, as part of his title objection, an unrecorded copy. I have run my client's name, and then he conveyed it to an LLC for $1. I've run that LLC. I've run the property address, and I cannot find that this was recorded.
Okay. Mark, question. Is it possible for us to issue a duplicate or an attested copy of the copy so that it can get recorded and then?
The answer to your question is yes, we keep 2 duplicate copies on hand. We can produce that and we can get a notarized statement that it is a valid attested copy. We do this several times over the course of a year. I would also say that I ran, and I'm not nearly the expert in title research as Attorney Salino is, but I did the very same thing, and I did not come up with a number, although there is a number out there. I think it was, there is a number on the electronic, the online registry. I want to say it was 13. Did I write it down? No, I did not. I believe it's 13,947 is the book. And then there is a page, and the page escapes me. But there was an order of, there is a book and page cited on that. Let me think back. No, excuse me. Negate that. That was another one we were doing. There was another title search. I'm sorry. No, we did not see a number on this one.
Yeah, I would think between attorneys Salino and Medeiros, who are very capable attorneys, they wouldn't have missed something they were looking for like that. And I think it just unfortunately probably was something that never got recorded. Perhaps the successful applicant in that instance didn't realize it needed to be or didn't understand that. So I think if we can issue the duplicate with the attestation that it's an exact copy of what was issued, and that can be recorded, we'll then be able to address the certificate of compliance.
That's comfortable with everybody, that was my recommendation. I would recommend continuing to the 25th, June 25th, and I will, I don't have either one of Mr. Salino or Mr. Carlson's email addresses. If you can contact me tomorrow, I will make sure to let you know when we get it notarized and ready to go, so it can be picked up.
I got a
Okay.
quick question. Is that going to is that date of June 25th going to be acceptable for purposes of the closing?
Fair question, Mr. Keogh. Right now, we're negotiating an extension that will probably go to the end of the month. So I will answer yes, that should be okay.
Very good, thank you. So yeah, I think that's the way to go. It makes some sense here. So in this instance, board members, I would, commissioners, I should say, I would entertain a motion to continue this matter, which is the request for certificate of compliance on DEP file 15-2129 until Tuesday, June 25, 2024 at 7 p.m.
So move. Second.
We have a seconded motion on the floor. We'll have a roll call vote. Richard,
Yes.
Nat,
Yes.
Liz,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
and my vote is yes. It's unanimous. So we'll continue this until the 25th. And what I would recommend is as soon as it is recorded, send by email to Mark Garrett the book and page, so we can then have that in our file to be able to address the certificate of compliance that was requested.
Excellent. Thank you. And I will email you tomorrow, Mark.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Slam.
Thank you
very
all.
much.
Good night.
Good night.
Our final field trip report is a request for determination of applicability, RDA 24-6 from Manal Mogawar. I'm butchering the name and I'm sorry. For permission to construct various livestock enclosures and to compost manure within 100-foot buffer zone of a bordering vegetated wetland. It's on land described as map 169, lot 180. It's otherwise known as 43 Maycomber Avenue. And in this case, I'd entertain a motion to waive the reading.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Seconded motion, roll call vote. Richard,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Liz,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Jim.
Yes.
My vote is yes, that passes unanimously. We did receive, commissioners, a request by email to continue this matter till our June 25, 2024 meeting at 7 p.m. I see no reason not.
Would the commission like an explanation? Typically, we don't consider our, continue RDAs. Be happy to explain it if you'd like.
Sure.
This all came about from an animal permit, and there was no filings for the site or the structures. We talked to these people and we basically felt that the use could be handled with an RDA, but we stipulated that they needed to provide us with a plan of attack for what they wanted to do, because they did have quite a number of animals on a relatively limited surface area. I won't get into the details. They did hire a consultant, Brendan Fanoff. His office put together a plan which was inadequate because we're dealing with
Think
a lot
about
of waste
how
that
amazing this is.
could discharge into a wetland. So I indicated to Brendan Fanoff's office, his engineer, that if they wanted to go forward with the plan, I was probably going to recommend a positive determination, forcing them into an NOI. I said, you know, and I said, your other option is to talk to your client about issuing, allowing you to prepare a more appropriate plan. And they asked me for a couple of days to decide. They made that decision, and that is why they asked for the continuance.
Okay, well, I think that's a wise choice for them to make. So I think it's fair. You were fair to the applicant. We just didn't come up with a positive determination, which to anyone in the audience who's hearing, who doesn't know what we do, positive determinations are not good. Positive is not pleasant. It means you've got to come and get our permission. A negative is good. It means you don't need our permission. So just for those who are watching, that's why Mr. Garrett was very fair to the applicant. Instead of recommending a positive determination, he gave them a chance to revise their submittals in a fashion that might allow it to be a negative determination. I think I summarized that properly. So with that being said, I will entertain a motion to continue this request for determination of applicability until our Tuesday, June 25, 2024 meeting at 7 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded motion, roll call vote. Richard,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Liz,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
and I'm yes as well. That motion passes unanimously. So now we're moving on to our public hearings. The first public hearing is a public hearing on DEP file 15-2733 NOI 24-21. It's on the after the fact notice of intent from Channing Dawson to restore unauthorized plant removal of native shrub species and to construct a 12-foot by 26-foot shed within the 100-foot buffer zone of a bordering vegetated wetland. It's on land described as map 15 lot 2. It's otherwise known as 2 Beach Rose Lane. I'll entertain a motion to waive the reading.
So moved.
Second.
The seconded vote, seconded motion, excuse me, roll call vote. Richard,
Yes.
Nat,
Yes.
Liz,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Jim.
Yes.
My vote is yes as well. That motion passes unanimously. Is there someone here this evening to represent the applicant?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Alan Haru, professional civil engineer. This evening, I'm representing Channing Dawson and Whitney Ray Dawson, owners of a single-family house lot at number 2 Beach Rose Lane, plat 15, lot 10. This property is on the west side of Smith Neck Road, opposite the entrance to the town beach at Round Hill. The bordering vegetated wetland on the property was delineated by Dave Bichette, wetlands consultant, and the record plan is entitled Site Plan Showing Proposed Shed Workshop and Planting of Native Species of Shrubs, dated April 30th, 2024. So I'd like to just share my screen.
Please do. Please do.
If you say it's okay,
It
Mike,
is
I'll
okay. Absolutely.
all right. It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
I'm not the host, so I didn't disable you here.
Oh,
Let's see, DCTV, if you want, please would undisable Mr. Haru so he can share his screen.
You should be all set, Alan. I just got a pop-up message.
all right. Thank you, Mark. All right, this is the site plan. And as I mentioned, the bordering, I'll zoom in a little bit in a minute. But the site is a 9-acre parcel of land. Beach Rose Lane runs down off of Smith Neck Road. There's an existing cottage in the northeast corner of the lot. This is the bordering vegetated wetland that was delineated by David Bichette. There's a laneway that runs up into the back of the property where there's a beautiful field back here. And there's utilities that run along that laneway up into the back. So let me just zoom in a little bit more. So Channing and Whitney proposed to construct a 12 by 26-foot shed workshop in the 100-foot buffer zone to wetland. Here's the proposed shed. Here's the wetland, 23 feet, 22 feet. Here's the laneway. There's an electric line here. There's a sewer line here. And the proposed shed is located immediately south of an existing underground electric cable and sewer force main and a 22-foot setback from the limit of wetland. Stephen Schmiel, wetland consultant, prepared a narrative report dated April 30th, 2024 to accompany the notice of intent, which provides a description of the existing site conditions, buffer zone impact assessment, and proposed planting of 42 3 to 5 gallon size native shrubs around the proposed workshop. So let me see if I can get the little more detail here. So this is a little more detail of the proposed shed. There's a ramp on both sides to get access into the shed, and then we're proposing 42 shrubs of various types that are listed on the plan. We have plant notes and a plant list on the plan, and that was all prepared in addition to a report by Steve Schmiel, a wetland consultant. So as Mike mentioned, the chairman mentioned, the DEP file number is SE 15-2733. This is an after the fact filing. Channing and didn't realize, you know, he had the wetlands delineated, but went ahead and did some clearing in preparation for this work before he had a permit. So we're here to respectfully request the commission issue an order of conditions to approve this work. I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Ellen. Mark, staff comments on this request.
Yeah, a few things that Alan left out. I mean, this isn't after the fact notice of intent, which he did state. Staff had been in discussion with Mr. Dawson for some time about this shed, and we were pretty comfortable with the shed location. And we understood that some clearing was going to be needed to place the shed in the location that we all agreed upon. We suggested to him to file an RDA, my memory escapes me, but it was either late last year or early this year. So they did, and when we went out to do our inspection, we noticed that prior to getting a determination, prior to getting any authorization, I would say substantial clearing of the buffer zone, not the wetland, but the buffer zone was done without any authorization. So we required the after the fact notice of intent, A, for the restoration of that buffer zone, as buffer zone is regulated but highly protected under the bylaw. And we allowed them to include the shed as part of that filing. So having said all that, I think Alan covered everything else pretty accurately. We're fine with the proposal. We're fine with the wetland line. We're fine with Mr. Schmeel's narrative. And so staff at this point is prepared to recommend a standard order of conditions with our restoration conditions included, with a modification. And I believe I sent you all modified conditions for several of the filings this evening. And I want to make note of the modified conditions for 15-2733, this particular filing. Special condition 41C, which reads, all plantings and restoration work will be completed prior to the completion of the shed construction and be completed no later than September 13th, 2024. And upon completion of the planting, a conservation agent shall be notified so that an inspection of said work can be made prior to the close of the growing season.
So can you build the shed in the manger?
Yeah. So Mark, there was I heard a question. So I think if I heard you correctly, the plantings have to occur first.
Prior to the completion of the shed.
Yeah.
Do the shed while they're doing the plantings. But we're not going to get into a hassle where the shed's going to go up and then the plantings are coming later. We don't know when the shed is going to go. So from my standpoint, I understand they want the shed and that's their goal, and I can appreciate that. But the plantings have to parallel the shed.
Yeah, so I think, Mr. Chairman, I think what would happen is, I think Channing and Whitney want to get started on this shed right away. So they need to get a building permit, and then they need to put the footing at the foundation. It has to have a proper foundation. So they would do the excavation. They need to remove one maple tree that's in very bad shape. So they would get the foundation in for the shed. And it's my understanding, it's sort of a kit type of thing, beautiful shed, but it's not going to be difficult to get it. It's not going to take a long time to get it erected. And then they would immediately do the work on planting the shrubs. According to Steve Schmeel, because we've had such a wet spring, it's getting dry now, but there's not going to be any issue with getting plants to grow successfully. So September 13th, to wrap things up, I think Channing and Whitney, you're on. If you want to say anything, I think we could wrap everything up by then.
That'd be fine. We can hit that date.
Okay.
All right. So basically,
If I could just
go right ahead, Mark.
go, okay. Everybody has to understand the plantings have to be done in conjunction with the work on the shed.
Okay, that's fine.
This was a violation, okay? We've been facing a lot of violations. A lot of people have been taking liberties in town.
We didn't make you.
Excuse me, I'm speaking.
I'm sorry.
Okay, it is my intention that we make sure that all this takes place with everybody. So we are being a little bit more stringent on this. I can't wait until, okay, the desire is for the shed. I understand that.
We're in agreement.
I don't.
But one person talk at a time, because I can't hear what he's saying when someone else is over talking him. And please, if you want to be heard, raise your hand. I'll recognize you. You can be heard in proper order. That's Robert's Rules of Order. That's the way I'm going to conduct the meeting. Okay. It's not a free for all. It's not a public forum. This is the way my meetings are conducted. Mark, continue. And
I don't know what you did not hear.
it can be heard.
I don't know where you lost me.
You were talking about, that the town's taking the issues of people not following the rules very seriously, and that's why we're going the way we're going with these things. And then I kind of lost it because I couldn't hear what you were saying.
Okay, well, all I was gonna say is, I understand their desire is the shed, and I get that. Okay, but personally, from a conservation perspective, I have no feelings one way or another about the shed. I'm willing to allow the shed to be built, but I'm not emotionally vested in it. I am emotionally invested in, because it is my job, to make sure that the wetlands and the buffer zones are properly restored. And in this case, we have a buffer zone that needs to be restored. I'm not suggesting they can't start the shed, but they're going to do plantings along with the shed. It's going to be a
If I hear this correctly, Mark, I'm sorry. I think I want to be pinpoint on this, because I think what we have in the suggestion is going to be just a tad too vague, given what I've just been hearing. So do you want the plantings to occur immediately after the foundation goes in? As the foundation goes in? We have to say something here. I think for the starting point for the plantings, we have a conclusion point, but I want a starting point for it.
Frankly, this is the first time I heard there was a foundation. The previous discussions was it was going to be on blocks.
No, it's going to be,
I have no.
Wait, Mark, I think what I'm trying to say here is, why don't we have a starting date for the plantings must begin and we have a conclusion date. I don't think we have to say while they're doing the foundation or whatever. Here's the starting date for planting. And then there it is. And then it's got to be finished by this date. I think if we do that, we might be accomplishing the same thing, but I want to be clear on when the starting date. I see your hands raised, Alan. Yeah, I will recognize.
If you're looking for a date.
Yeah. I just think I would feel that would be a clearer indication because we have two things going on here. One is the shed, but the other, as you quite correctly point out, is the restoration. So we shouldn't have to wait on the restoration. It is really nothing to do with the shed. The restoration has to do with the violation.
Right.
I'll recognize you, Alan. I see your hand is up. You don't have to keep it up. I don't want your arm to get tired. So do you have an idea on the date, Mark?
I said July 1st.
Okay. So the modification will be slightly modified with this evening saying plantings begin by 7/1/2024.
Yep.
And everything is completed by 7/13/2024. Is that correct, Mark?
September 13th, not.
Well, I said, what did I say? September 13, 2024 is what I wrote, and I may have said something different. So
That's it.
Okay. So I think that if you want to speak, Alan, you can, but I think that addresses the issue that I was concerned with. And I think if I heard.
Well, the only thing I would say is I just wanted to clarify that this shed is going to require a building permit, and the foundation is going to have to provide frost protection. So I believe the way that the shed would be, the foundation would be constructed is much like a deck addition to a house, where they would excavate and put in precast concrete, what are called frost poles, these concrete precast poles that are 5 feet high. They're 4 feet into the ground. They stick out of the ground a foot. Once he gets the 14 frost poles or whatever number is necessary to support this shed, then I would say the shrubs are all proposed 10 feet away from the shed, around the shed. That would be a good time to put the shrubs in. And then the shed can be placed from the access driveway that's on the north side of the shed. The concern I would have is it's already June 11th. The building department has to issue a building permit. I would hope they could do that by July 1st, but I don't know if they can. So I would not want to really, I suppose we could plant the shrubs before we get the foundation in, but I would prefer to get the foundation in, then plant the shrubs, then place the shed. But that's my 2 cents.
Yeah,
Thank
I understand that, Alan, and I'm really appreciative of what you're trying to do sequentially,
Yeah.
but I'm trying to address this in a way which is clear. And we addressed the violation first. We're not going to disagree. Well, we haven't voted yet, but I don't see any reason to disagree with the shed being allowed to be constructed. So that to me would be a separate issue. I mean, if there were no violation, I think what you suggest would make some sense. If this were just, we want your permission to do some clearing and to put a shed in, I would probably agree. But I want the violation satisfied regardless of whether a shed goes in. They may decide not to do the shed this year, to do it next year, and we would have no control over that. So I need to have a starting date and an ending date. And I know that they don't intend for that to be the case, but things do happen. I just want the violation taken care of. And we'll give, if the vote is positive vote, there'll be the permission to put the shed in, and you'd have 3 years to put the shed in. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but I want to get that violation corrected as soon as possible.
Okay.
That's the way I feel. I won't speak for all the commissioners, but I think that way we've allowed the filing to cover 2 bases, but we've appropriately covered the violation as we should, as our duty is as commissioners. But I'll leave it at that. So, does any commissioner have any question of Mr. Garrett? Does any commissioner have any question of Mr. Haru? Is there anyone in the audience that wants to be heard on this application?
Your hand is up.
Okay.
Mr. Dawson has his hand up.
Yeah, I reckon. Go ahead.
I did have my hand up. The question is, we're planning to start the construction on the site on August 6th, and we'll go for 5 days. The material, the fact of the matter is there are people walking around the shed all of that time and wonders if you've already started planting, that those plants aren't destroyed or in some way, it's 10 feet from the shed. I get that. And maybe that's enough. But I just want to put it in the record that we're going to try to start on August 6th building.
I appreciate that. And I realize it may mean that the workers have to be a little more careful around the plantings. But I do want the violation corrected.
Okay.
And I want a start date because I don't want it to be ambiguous as tying into the construction. They're really 2 separate things. And as I said a moment ago, I know when you mentioned you intended to get this all completed by the 13th. Now you just indicated correctly that you want to start the construction on August 6th. I'm very aware of that's your intent, but things could happen. I just don't want the violation to not be corrected if things do happen. So that's
Okay, I accept it.
Does anyone else in the audience wish to speak on this matter?
Mr. Chairman, I have one more very minor point. I failed to mention that I was in agreement with Alan. My recommendation on the standard order with the conditions as read is based on the plan submitted dated April 30th, 2024.
Correct. Right. Mr. Haru did mention that in his presentation as well. So you're both talking about the same plan, which is always a good thing. So I don't see anyone else in the audience that wants to be heard. So at this juncture, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing on this matter.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded, roll call vote. Richard,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Liz,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
and my vote is yes. That passes unanimously. At this juncture, I'll entertain a motion to issue on the application, which is DEP file 15-2733, a standard order of conditions with our restoration conditions as modified especially modification on 40 small c as read by Mr. Garrett, with the further modification that the plantings will commence on July 1, 2024, and everything would be completed by September 13, 2024, as originally modified.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded. Roll call vote. Richard,
Yes.
Nat,
Yes.
Liz,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Jim.
Yes.
My vote is yes. That motion passes unanimously. So
Thank you very much.
have your order of conditions.
Thank you,
Thank
gentlemen.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
Next public hearing is on DEP file 15-2732. That's NOI 2433 from Stephen DeFrancisco to demolish an existing dwelling and construct a new single-family dwelling with associated grading, utilities, and driveway within bordering land subject to flooding and the 100-foot buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland and inland bank to Lake Nokichoke. The land is described as map 179, lots 179-6. It's otherwise known as 718 Reed Road. I'll entertain a motion to waive the reading.
So moved.
A second. Motion is seconded. Roll call vote. Richard,
Yes.
Nat,
Yes.
Liz,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Jim.
Yes.
And my vote is yes. That motion passes unanimously. Is there someone here this evening to speak on behalf of the applicant?
I do not see anybody.
I don't either. I'm not noticing anybody standing up, ready to. Mark, was there, could you just check your emails to see if anybody sent anything saying they were coming in late or something?
Nope. There was nobody checked. Nobody emailed me at all.
Okay.
If I could, I might be able to explain the concern here or the absence. I don't know why they would be absent. But the last revision plan they submitted, they indicated that there was a net increase of 604 square feet of displacement of floodplain. This is a bordering land subject to flooding, but they showed no compensatory flood storage to offset that. And they also showed no facility for, flood vents for flow through. I sent an email and I commented on Viewpoint asking for a revision by last Thursday, did not receive one. Have heard nothing since. So I don't know what the situation is with the plan. I thought they were pretty much fast tracking this. Again, this is the old Musical Beach site on Reed Road, which we issued an RDA several months ago to clean up what was a horrific dump site and removal of all sorts of waste material just to clean the site up. They did a magnificent job. They did not impact Lake Nokichoke. The site actually really looks good, except for the dilapidated structures, of which they're proposing to remove one in this notice and build a single family home in its place. So the site has improved, but there still are some discrepancies here that they haven't answered. And I was going to recommend that we continue this anyway for a plan revision to address the floodplain concerns.
I think that would have been a good suggestion, and even though there's nobody here to request it, I'm not inclined to vote to deny or approve without any presentation. So I think it is appropriate to entertain a motion to continue until Tuesday, June 25, 2024 at 7 p.m. And I think at that point, Mark, you can let them know nobody showed up.
I will.
And if nobody shows up again, it's gonna probably be, and my vote will be a denial. So,
Yeah, we probably will need to talk about it because this is, a lot of people want this to take place, regulatory.
I understand, but if they're not showing up, I would vote to
I
deny.
get that. I get
And they
that.
can refile it if they want to. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna preclude them from doing that, but to not show up, it could be a mistake. It didn't get on somebody's calendar. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt once. I won't give it to you twice. So if they don't show up a second time and haven't asked for a continuance of the meeting that I just described, then I'm inclined to say, then you have to file again, because I'm not a babysitter, okay?
Right. It's your call.
That would be my call. But anyway, the motion I would suggest we make is a motion to continue the public hearing until Tuesday, June 25, 2024 at 7 p.m.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second on that, please?
Second.
Seconded motion, roll call vote. Richard,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Liz,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. That motion does pass unanimously. And I would just say, Mark, if you let them know, my inclination, you can say it's not the commission that's talking, it's Mike Kehoe, and you won't get a positive vote from him if you don't show up.
Yep.
I'm going to vote to ask for it to be denied
Yep.
without prejudice, and they can
Okay.
read. So we're moving on to the third public hearing, which is public hearing on DEP file 15-2738, NOI 24-24. It's an after-the-fact notice of intent from George and Carol Moses to restore the unauthorized plant removal of native plant species, to remove yard waste in the treehouse, and to construct an addition within the 100-foot buffer zone to a coastal wetland. The applicants also wish to conduct periodic vista pruning on a coastal bank and within land subject to coastal storm flowage. The land is described as map 18, lot 12. It's otherwise known as 27 Gaffney Road. I'll entertain a motion to waive the reading, please.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded motion before us. Roll call vote. Richard,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Liz,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Jim.
Yes.
My vote is yes as well. Is there somebody here this evening on behalf of the applicant? I see Alan Haru here, so I'm assuming.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. Again, for the record, my name is Alan Haru, professional engineer. For this public hearing, I'm representing George and Carol Moses, owner of a single-family house at 27 Gaffney Road, Plat 18, Lot 12. George and Carol propose to construct a house addition and decks in the 100-foot buffer zone to wetlands and coastal bank. If I could share my screen.
Yes, you can.
I'm getting that same message again, but hopefully, there we go. All right. So can you see that?
I see blank. Now I see it. It just popped.
Okay, let me zoom in just a little bit, maybe just a little bit more. Okay, let me see. Okay, so this is an after the fact filing, as as the chair mentioned. The top of the, well, first, the limit of wetland was delineated by Jenna Silva. So we have a flagged wetland here at the bottom of the plan. We have another flagged wetland here on the left. This is the south side. So we have a flagged wetland that's salt marsh along the south side of the building envelope, and another wetland along the east side of the building envelope. And the top of coastal bank was delineated by me, and it's in accordance with the DEP policy 92-1. The top of the coastal bank is this dotted line here, and it's a segmented line. It's a dotted line here. It's a function of the floodplain and the slope of the land. The mapped FEMA flood zone is AE elevation 12, NAVD 88, which is mean sea level, and it's shown on the site. This is an after-the-fact filing for a periodic vista pruning on the coastal bank and within land subject to coastal storm flowage, and the removal of yard waste near the wetland. So as I mentioned initially, this is the existing house. We're proposing an addition, and a deck here around the addition. All of this work is in the buffer zone to the wetland and the buffer zone to the coastal bank. But that's the only resource area. There's a pile of yard waste right near the wetland up near Gaffney Road. And the crosshatched area on the plan here is coastal bank, where the applicant had done some clearing work without a permit. And so we had Stephen Schmiel, wetland consultant, visit the site, and he prepared some buffer enhancement notes here on the plan. There will be some shrubs planted, 3 to 5 gallon plant size in this area here, where we're going to get rid of an old tree house that's dilapidated. And we have a plant list for those shrubs. And then there are vista pruning notes on the plan that Stephen Schmiel has recommended. So as I mentioned, the old treehouse will be removed. Native species of shrubs will be planted for enhancement of the buffer zone to the wetland. Vista pruning and buffer zone enhancement notes prepared by Stephen Schmiel, wetland consultant, are shown on the plan. A silt fence and straw wattle erosion control barrier is proposed around the south and east sides of the house where the building addition project is proposed. I don't know if Stephen Schmiel is in attendance, but to answer any of your questions, you know, as far as the vista pruning and the buffer zone, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about the building addition or the project in general. Thank you.
Alan, I have one quick question. What was your plan date?
Oh, yes. It is, the record plan is entitled Site Plan, and it's dated May 10th, 2024.
Thank you. Mark, I would now entertain staff's comments on this application.
Yeah, I'll break this up into a couple pieces. First of all, the proposed deck and addition work is certainly within buffer zone, but it's also within lawn area. It's an actively used portion of the parcel, so take that into account when you're evaluating my recommendation and the project in general. Beyond that, we have, as Alan indicated, to the lower right-hand corner of the site, right near the wetland, there is a pile of yard waste, which has been proposed to be removed. We also have, at the top center of the picture, we have a tree house, rather dilapidated, that is being proposed to be removed. And it's an area that is a little bit devoid of vegetation. So they have proposed nine replacement shrubs in that area. And the species list that they've provided is very appropriate. The last piece is the vista pruning, which was really the essence of the violation, aside from that small debris pile that I mentioned earlier. They literally cut stuff right down to, 6 inches to 10 inches above the ground for vista pruning. And that was all within resource area and not vegetated resource areas from the standpoint of wetland vegetation, but resource areas, coastal bank, land subject to coastal storm flowage, certainly within certain buffer zones and the like. And that was really the essence of the violation. I was asked to go out and meet with Mr. Schmiel, which I'm always glad to do because I think he's a very, very good restoration consultant as well as a very good wetlands consultant. And we discussed, several options out there. And he offered, I thought, a very reasonable suggestion, which I'm willing to entertain as part of my recommendation, and that is to allow the vegetation which has been cut to reestablish itself and grow to certainly a altered but healthy cover height, and then allow it to be trimmed periodically to a height of no less than 8 feet, which is typically what our standard has been on all these coastal vista pruning projects. So through the life of the order, we would observe how this vegetation restores itself. And prior to the end of the order, the expiration of the order, Steve and I would again go out, or Steve, somebody would go out, hopefully it would be me and Steve, to reassess the situation out there. And if additional plantings are required, then we will require them. If they're not required, we won't require them. We've seen natural restoration take place. I think it's fairly prudent in here because to go in and plant things in these areas would further disturb the area, maybe needlessly. So I'd like to try to avoid that. So having said all that, staff is prepared to recommend a standard order of conditions as modified per the site plan dated May 10th, 2024. And the modified conditions, that would be standard order with our standard restoration conditions. Again, I had to tailor special condition 41 to mimic this as opposed to an active planting proposal, which we saw in a previous case. And so what I modified was special condition 41, subparagraph A, which reads, all vegetation cut within the resource area or the 100-foot buffer zone shall be allowed to reestablish itself and will be revisited prior to the expiration of this order of conditions to determine at the discretion of a conservation agent of the town if additional plantings are required to further reestablish the pre-existing cover closure in the areas of impact. All unstable bare ground shall be seeded with a standard wetland or erosion control seed mix as per the conditions and planted at the recommended density. I go on to say tree and shrub vista pruning shall be limited to the locations identified on the plan of record, that being the May 10th plan, and shall not be pruned to a height of less than or equal to 8 feet from the ground surface and shall occur outside of the growing season. Cut materials shall be removed from the pruning locations by hand, may be chipped and spread on the existing footpaths or removed from the site for proper disposal. Aside from the work authorized under this order, no additional activities of any type shall occur within the 25-foot of the delineated wetland line of record established under this order unless authorized in the future by the commission or an agent. And lastly, when using seed mixes of any type or source, the Conservation Commission shall require all sowing of seed to be at the specified density and aerial coverage. So that is my recommendation.
Thank you, Mark. Does any commissioner have any question of either Mr. Garrett or Mr. Haru? I don't see any. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to be heard on this application? Again, I don't see any. At this juncture, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved. Second.
Second motion. Roll call vote. Richard,
Yes.
Nat,
Yes.
Liz,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Jim.
Yes.
At this point, I would entertain a motion to issue a standard order of conditions as modified per the site plan submitted dated May 10, 2024, with our standard restoration conditions with condition 41A modified as read by Mr. Garrett, which specifies, amongst other things, the limits of vista pruning to those areas designated on the May 10, 2024 plan, and to the pruning resulting in the shrubs, trees, etc., having a height of no less than 8 feet. Also, that this will all be reassessed before the expiration of the order of conditions, and that the town of Dartmouth conservation agent will reassess the need at that time for further plantings. Again, I'll entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved. Second.
Seconded motion. Roll call vote. Richard,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Liz,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
and my vote is yes. That motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Alan.
We're moving to our fourth public hearing, and it's on DEP file 15-2736, NOI 24-25 from Belmar Cove LLC, care of Mario Ferreira, to repair and improve a pier and to conduct seawall maintenance on land subject to coastal storm flowage and land under the ocean on a coastal bank and land containing shellfish. The land is described as map 124, excuse me, lot 4. It's otherwise known as 43 Mosier Street. I'll entertain a motion to waive the reading.
So moved. Second.
Seconded motion. Roll call vote. Richard,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Liz,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Jim.
Yes.
My vote is yes. That motion passes unanimously. Is there someone here this evening wishing to speak on behalf of the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, we received an email, which I forwarded to the commission last week, requesting a continuance until 6/25/24.
Okay, I will, at this point, just check to see if there's anyone in the audience for this matter. I don't see anyone. So I will entertain a motion to continue this matter at the applicant's request until 6/25/2024 public hearing at 7 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Seconded motion. Roll call vote. Richard,
Yes.
Nat,
Yes.
Liz,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Jim.
Yes.
My vote is yes. That motion passes unanimously. Our fifth and final public hearing is public hearing on DEP file 15-2632, AMOOC 24-2 to amend the order of conditions from Elizabeth C. and Ann R. Heidi Cooper for the size reduction of a proposed residential pier within land subject to coastal storm flowage, flood zone VE elevation 26, and within coastal bank, coastal beach, land under the ocean, and land containing shellfish. It's on land described as map 97, lot 58, otherwise known as 7 Turn Lane. At this juncture, I'll entertain a motion to waive the reading.
So moved.
There's a second on that.
Second.
Seconded motion. Roll call vote. Richard,
Yes.
Nat,
Yes.
Liz,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Jim.
Yes.
My vote is yes. That motion passes unanimously. Mr. Leone, are you here on behalf of the applicant?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chairman. How are you?
Very good. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Again, good evening, Matt Leone with Schneider, Davignon and Leone here tonight, seeking an amended order of conditions on behalf of Elizabeth and Ann Hudekoper and the Retreat Family Trust. The site is located at 7 Turn Lane, known as Assessor's Lot 58 on map 97. It's located on the northeast corner of the Nonquick community. The project consists of constructing a pile-supported pier into the waters of Buzzards Bay. The project in its original design has been before this board and was granted an order of conditions on December 12th, 2022. Following that order of conditions, the applicant filed with the Army Corps of Engineers and received feedback about the proposed pier crossing the existing eelgrass meadow. In response to these comments, the pier has been reduced in length to avoid crossing the meadow, and the original fixed pier length has been reduced from an original 162 feet to the newly proposed 86 feet. And if you would give me the permission, I will share the screen to bring up the most current plan.
Yes, you have it.
Yep.
Thank you.
This is the going to be the 12/23 plan. And I should come up. You guys seeing that?
I
Yes.
can.
You can?
Yes, we can.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Okay. Yeah, so the length of the pier has been reduced down to 86 feet. And with the reduction in length, the pile bent spacing has also been reduced from an original 32 feet on center to 22 and 20 on center. And I'll zoom in here a little bit to give you guys a better view of the actual structure as proposed. There we go. This spacing has allowed for the use of 4x12 timber stringers instead of the 12-inch by 6-inch galvanized structural tubing that was originally proposed. That's really the only structural change to the design. It's basically the same pier, just shortened and pulled away from the eelgrass. The construction methodology and materials are consistent with the previously permitted pier. The new design has been approved by the Army Corps of Engineers on November 14th, 2023, and we were issued a Chapter 91 Waterways license on February 5th, 2024. I believe those have been included in our package that was submitted to the board, in addition to a revised letter from the structural engineer who had reviewed the project as a request from the board prior. He has reviewed the current design and has made comment that was included in that package as well. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Leone. Mark, comments from staff would be appreciated.
Yes, this is a project that was approved, as Mr. Leone said, at a much longer length. It complied with Division of Marine Fisheries requirements for eelgrass, height above eelgrass and things of that nature. Clearly, that didn't hold with the Corps of Engineers, and they mandated the project to be shortened, and they did that, I believe, by 47 feet, if I recall correctly, right, Matt?
Yes, that sounds great. Actually, it's not 47 feet. It was 47%. It was cut down from 162 original length to 86 feet.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So this is a lesser version of what we approved back in 2022. So, I mean, basically, we're being asked to amend the permit, and I don't see why we shouldn't. And my recommendation is to do so. However, I do want to raise a point. In the previous filing, we had some issues with the original filing and whose property was the pier on, and at first it was listed as being on 7-Turn Lane, which 7-Turn Lane, the Hudicoopers are the applicants, but this pier actually resides on land owned by the non-quit proprietors. And we went through a bit of a wrangle with the consultant, but we finally got it resolved correctly, and we moved forward. Jumping ahead to earlier today, a gentleman who I believe is on, Mr. William Roch, came into my office, who is a proprietor, and he was questioning why all these piers are being permitted on the proprietor's land, and the proprietors are not at all involved. They barely know what's going on. And I said, well, you're listed here. You know, noticing has been given to the address that we have on record for the representative of the proprietors, who's typically an accountant or an attorney somewhere remotely removed. And so Mr. Roch and I had quite an extensive conversation about this, and I think he makes a very valid point. Of course, I don't think that they can do much about the previous permit issued, and we are being asked to amend that permit, so I don't know how much leverage there really is. But we did discuss that non-quit may have to look at land usage on the site. I bring this up only as an FYI, because there's been a lot of discussion in town about the proliferation of docks. And now we're talking about proliferation of docks by applicants on separate parcels that are owned by the community. And is there proper notification, so on and so forth. So I just bring that to the attention. I did indicate to Mr. Roch that I would do that. And I think I've done that, kind of summarized what we spent about a half hour talking about earlier. Having said all that, I am prepared to recommend amending the order of conditions to include all of the conditions of the previous order. However, one condition has to be modified, and that would be special condition 44, which, if you recall, we have been, at the recommendation of the harbor master, requiring for shellfish mitigation for impacts to land subject to land containing shellfish, that a donation be made to the seed purchasing account, which is typically recommended by Division of Marine Fisheries and our own shellfish warden. The original dock required a payment of $1,500 because of its surface area. And that payment has yet to be made because they never had all their permits in place to construct the thing. So, based on the reduced surface area, that $1,500 using the same formula is that number is reduced to $850. We've gone from 600 square feet of coverage in the original order to 350 square feet in the revised project proposal. So that is my recommendation.
Thank you, Mark. Speaking for myself, the issues that have been raised relative to ownership of the land on which this project is proposed and who has the legal right to do what is not something that this commission has the right to change. So the commission's previous vote to issue an order of conditions and the commission's actions this evening, whether to vote in favor or not of an amendment, doesn't change the ownership of that property or the rights of the true owner. So the non-quit proprietors, if they believe that this action that's being proposed by the Heide Coopers is on their land and without permission, would have certainly no loss of rights to pursue the remedies of a landowner against a trespasser. Okay, so we're not giving away somebody else's rights. We're looking at this solely as the issue of whether or not the project before us, and we do this for everybody, complies with the provisions relative to wetlands at both state, local, and in the case of a dock, you also have waterways division, I guess, and others, whether you comply with those regulations. We're not title examiners. We're not title insurers. The applicant comes in telling us they own the property. It's not a commissioner's job or this commission's job to then ascertain the veracity of that statement and to issue an opinion as to ownership. That goes well beyond our responsibility. But to that point, I want anyone here who's listening, specifically anyone from non-quit proprietors, to know that whatever vote we take and whatever vote we had taken doesn't change their ownership rights. So they may wish to consult with somebody, an attorney, hopefully, whose knowledge base involves real estate law, to determine whether they have the right to prevent this or the right to have the Heide Coopers seek permission to do this or whatever else may be the case. I am sure the Heide Coopers have retained capable counsel as well who advise them they have that right, but otherwise they wouldn't, I don't think, have made the statement in their applications that they have the right to this property. But again, our job isn't to determine who's right or wrong in that fight. Our job is more limited. That's my view. Does any commissioner have any question on this application? I don't see any. Is there someone here this evening that wants to speak to this application?
Will Roach.
I recognize you, Mr. Roach. You have the floor.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for your comments and thank Mark for taking the time today to kind of fill me in on the plan. I think most of my concerns are outside the scope of the commission. As you said, it's more also probably more looking forward rather than necessarily at this current project and where the stage of it is. As an abutter, I was not notified of the project 2 years ago, so I'm playing sort of catch up. And that was kind of one of the things that happened. But most of my concerns are just around if this occurs and continues to occur in the future, that the proprietors, because it's sort of an unusual situation of common land, that we have some kind of a plan or a policy or process that's maybe addressing this more head on than we do today. So that was my interest in kind of understanding more about the history and what's going on with the plan. I appreciate Mark's time. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for saying that. We're certainly we try very hard to address everyone's questions, but I wanted to be clear what we can and can't do. And I think what you've just described is an issue that non-quit proprietors should take up and decide, what they want to do about their common land, and perhaps promulgate rules or regulations regarding its use and make sure that all the property owners acknowledge those. But that's a different hunt, not Conservation Commission. But I appreciate your concerns. We hear you, but we can't address them, unfortunately. That being said, is there anyone else who wants to be heard on this application? I don't see any. So at this point in this hearing, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded motion, we'll do a roll call vote. Richard?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Liz?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
My vote is yes. That motion passes unanimously. At this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the request for the amended order of conditions in accordance with the plan submitted dated 12/12/2023, subject to our standard order of conditions with a modification to condition number 44, reducing the amount of money to be paid for shellfish restoration or seeding to $850.
So moved. Second.
Second, roll call vote. Richard?
Yes.
Nat?
Yes.
Liz?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
My vote is yes. That motion passes unanimously. That concludes our public hearings. We now
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. We now move on
Thank you.
for discussion. Mark, you've got the floor.
Okay, well, we have no bills, so that's a good thing, as we're getting close to the end of our budget. July 1st will be the beginning of the next fiscal year, so we'll be rich again. Discussion items, I did send an email out at town meeting last Tuesday. The town meeting approved the wetland bylaw revisions, so that's all said and done. That will be, town clerk will be submitting those to the AG's office for final sign off. So we can, begin to think about utilizing those. I will get copies of all of the new documentation, approved documentation out to the commissioners so they have the updated stuff, the final text in front of them. Having said that, I'll bounce right into the second one. Now that we have an approved bylaw, I'm shaking the trees again. We got to work on the regulations to make them consistent with the bylaw and consistent with what we need to do moving forward procedurally. So again, any comments that you may have, please get them to me. We have not engaged town council yet. I think at some point we will. But we really need to get moving on this. I know staff is busy. I know it's summertime, but we really have to, we can't let this languish for months and months and months and come the holidays say, oh my gosh, we're not there yet. So, and that's something that doesn't have to go to town meeting. We have public hearings ourselves. We have public hearings with the select board, and it's basically a done deal. So,
Give you my I've already gotten through most of it, so I'll give you my comments no later than Monday afternoon.
okay,
So you'll have my comments next week.
it sounds good.
So I started, then I got called away to other things, and I got back to it and I didn't finish, but I will finish and get it out to you by Monday.
Okay. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I do think it's important, if everyone gets the chance to look at what Mark's circulated. You know, if you don't have any comments, if you think it's fine, that's also a comment. But I think everyone should just at least get back to Mark and let him know I read it, I'm fine with it, or here are the suggestions I have.
I would like to know one way or another. It makes life easier. So, you know,
I agree with you, but I think for purposes of this commission and our records, I just feel it's more appropriate for everyone to at least said, I read it, I'm okay with it, or I read it and here are my comments. That way we're not leaving it in doubt that these aren't Mark Garrett's, regulations. These are the Dartmouth Conservation Commission regulations. And as commissioners, we just have we have a duty to read it, and we have the right to comment on it. So,
yeah, please don't put the weight of Dartmouth on my shoulders. Please don't do that.
that's why I'm saying I didn't. I said it's not Mark Garrett's. I said it's.
I'm asking.
And we are the commissioners. So, we work in concert with Mark. And it's our job to read these proposals, and then it's our duty to comment on them. If we have comments, even if it's to say, I think they're fine, that's a comment. And then we know that we as commissioners have done our job.
I've
All
gone
right.
through it once, Mark, and I have a few comments, so I'll send them over to you. I might go back through it once more. I will also admit that I know some of the sections in blue, which were kind of up for discussion.
Those are questions. Those are, I just highlighted that they're a little ambiguous, and we need to think about how we want to go forward on those, one way or another. I didn't want to draw a conclusion. That was just too
Sure.
a fact that I could do that. So,
I gotta ask the commissioners, everyone have a copy of what Mark sent out? Is anyone missing it? If you're missing it, I'm sure we could send it out again. But I want to be sure you all have a copy so that you can look at it.
I think I have a copy, but to be honest, if you wouldn't mind just re-forwarding it so it's at the top of my email, I'll make sure to get my comments with you by the next meeting on the 25th.
well, you did comment with no comments originally, so I did receive something from you. But yeah, hey, if you want to do it again, have at it. I'll get it to you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay.
And Mark, might as well just send it to everybody so they have it.
Well, it would be easier.
But I mean, please take a look at it, read it, mark it up if you want to. And if you read it and you're loving it and you think it's great, just say, I'm satisfied with it. Just so everyone comments, I think it'd be important. Mark, go ahead. You got the floor again with the meetings.
Yep. Okay. So it is that time again. Twice a year, we have to look forward to the next 6 months of our lives as it relates to the commission. I forwarded you through email a copy of a proposed schedule going from July 2024 to January 2025. I've noted specific days that come close to holidays or significant dates that we live with. I will tell you that this particular schedule avoids the fall town meeting Tuesday, and also avoids the, I don't know if fall town meeting's on Tuesday, but it avoids town meeting. And it also avoids the election day, the first Tuesday of November. So we're clean with, governmental conflicts, so to speak. So I offer this is updated right through to January 21st. 2025. I'd love to get this approved, because what I will then do is get it over to DCTV so that they can assign us Zoom links for this next 6 months. With the understanding, and then I don't know that everybody hears it all the time, but Michael reads it, every agenda. March 31st, 2025 is the date to which remote, hybrid, in-person requirements may change. We've heard nothing on that, and we probably won't hear anything on that until the earliest, the end of the year, beginning of next year, but that's out there. So this schedule is consistent with our virtual meeting schedule, and we will continue to conduct business that way unless the commission chooses to change that. But assuming you don't want to change, I need to get those links so we have them set up and ready to go.
I looked it over. At this point, I don't have any conflicts. So it looks fine to me. Obviously, things may occur in my life that I had no control over and I'm not aware of now. So there's a possibility, but I'd say it's fine from my standpoint.
I agree. I thought it looked good.
I agree.
Agree.
So I think you can give that to DCTV, Mark.
Okay. I'll take that. I'll take that as a straw poll, yes.
Yes, sir. And the only, I guess we could write maybe a quick email just to see what Kyle thinks. If he knows there's but you're given enough advance notice that I think we wouldn't schedule on this date unless we absolutely had to. So I'm thinking we'll move on to our enforcement issues.
Okay. The first 28 Meadowwood, I went out on site. It was a back and forth, not a disrespectful back and forth, but it was a back and forth, and I don't really think it's a violation. She will be filing a notice of intent. It will not be an after the fact on some work she wants to do. She did some work in the front of the yard, which a very small fraction was in buffer zone, and it really didn't mean anything. So that one, if you've heard about it through the grapevine, it's no longer an enforcement issue. It's just going to be a straight filing issue. I think there's several elements to what they're proposing, but she understands what she needs to do, and I know she has Zenith land surveyors engaged on this, so they're moving forward. Some very interesting news. 2 weeks ago, I was on the Francis site. For those of you who have been around the block a while, you'll remember the long-standing Francis enforcement. We were there for a pre-construction meeting with their consultant, and I think we're moving forward. I've also on that, because the Francises and and Kingfisher, who are abutters, do not get along, I've been kind of playing intermediary between the two, and so far everything is pretty good. So hopefully we'll have, and the work is supposed to be completed by September 17th of this year. So knock on wood, we may be able to close out this long-standing major enforcement issue that we have, as the chairman is grinning at me.
That was at a time when I had all black hair.
So I thought that was a good advancement of the process. We are getting there, slogging to get there, but we are getting there. We have a new one, 1031 Old Fall River Road. Somebody went in and just started working in buffer zone associated with a residential use. We're on top of that. We will be getting an after the fact notice of intent. We haven't issued an enforcement order. We put a cease and desist on them, and hopefully we'll get something from them pretty soon. The last thing is just an FYI, I did do a site visit at the Mare site, 22 Slocum Road. Again, this is an oldie but certainly a goodie. I did know that there was a partial recurrence of the Phragmites, which they attempted to remove last year. That's not uncommon with Phragmites. Phragmites usually takes about 3 to 4 years to really get knocked down. They've knocked down a lot of it, but some did recur. I did notify the owner, the Mares. I did notify their consultants, both Farland and Brad Holmes. So everybody's aware that somebody's got to get out there and address this recurring stand of Phragmites. But the site looks really good. Apparently the downside, the bad news about this whole thing is that Buzzards Bay Coalition was set to purchase the property, but there's been problems in negotiations and agreed prices, so that is on hold right now. So Mare still has to do the work. Somebody's got to get the work done to address the after the fact notice of intent. And something that did not get on this schedule because I didn't know, but apparently off Deerfield Road, the trailer in the woods, they apparently over the weekend did the planting to meet the June 14th deadline. We are notified today, so we will be doing a site visit out there to assess the restoration plantings and also see what the status of the trailer is. The trailer needed to be removed within 30 days of the letter from the zoning agent, and I believe that was at the end of May, so I think it's got to be out of there by the end of the month. So that's everything up to date on enforcement, active enforcement that we're dealing with right now. We got a couple of things that we're still working on, but not ready to report on them just yet.
Thank you, Mark. I have no new matter to bring up before the commission, but if any commissioner does, please let me know.
We got one thing, Mike,
Sure.
and it's a question for the group. And Mark, you correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think during your time, Mark, you've done a very good job of staying on top of these various enforcement orders. But as I understand it, there are a few that predate you that are still technically out there and not closed, where we've kind of lost our leverage. And so the question to the group is, does it make sense, if those do exist, for this commission to review, I don't know if it's semi-annually or quarterly, a full list of any outstanding enforcement orders that have not been closed?
I can forward you a spreadsheet which we maintain and we update probably 4 or 5 times a year. And it's color coded. The red, the blacks are still active. The red texts are resolved. And there still is a lot of black on that list, but there's far less black than there was 3 years ago. And I think I know one of the sites you're talking about.
Yeah, you probably do know it. And the reason
It's 801 Potomska Road.
you got it. Yeah, it recently was listed again, and an abutter, actually 2 abutters, asked me some questions about it. And I gave them some of the, information you shared with me last time we spoke about it, but it did cross my mind. I recall that list has, to your point, has a few other matters that aren't closed out. And even if there's nothing we can do about them for whatever reason, I think it may be beneficial that this commission is at least aware of the status of them. And if something changes, we're able to act upon it, whether there's a sale or whatever else.
I can get that spread. I can update that spreadsheet for you. It's not totally up to date. It's, a month and a half out when we will, and unfortunately we've had a lot of new stuff come in. So we're dealing with that. And basically the spreadsheet identifies the site. identifies how we found out about it, and tries to give you an updated statement of status,
Mhm.
Awaiting an after the fact notice of intent, enforcement order issued with due date of, things like that. To give you a kind of an idea of where we are in all of this. And it's I don't want to say it's overwhelming, but there's a lot of stuff out there that we're addressing, and we're trying to close them out as best we can. And I mean, Francis is a great example. I mean, we kind of let that one slide a little bit until such time as once we closed out Kingfisher, we then had to go, they were kind of related, so we had to go after, the other. So we do the best we can with it.
Yeah. I just think it would be good, like if you were to leave, Mark, some of us might not even be aware that some of those existed. I just think it's important that that full list is shared with the group periodically.
I can do
That's
that.
all.
I mean, I've never shared it because nobody's really ever asked for it. It's hanging
Yeah.
on the wall. I mean,
I've seen it in your office. That's how I know it exists.
It could also just be, it could be a good reference point too, if something comes across your desk with another violation and it's somebody who has already offended previously in the past, just so that we can all kind of become familiar with that. I think. Could be
That's fine. That's fine.
I think it's a good idea, and I think it's something that as a commission, we all should probably know that. Some of us who have been through the mill on some of the older ones remember them, but
Mhm.
the years go by and you don't realize how long ago that violation has been outstanding, and something like that reminds you maybe we better kick it into a higher gear.
I can tell you that I'm in my 9th year here, and there are things on that list that have been unresolved that predate me coming to Dartmouth.
Oh, I know they are. Mark,
Yeah.
So
familiar with some of them.
to the collective group, I know some of
I'm
the.
familiar with some of them, and when we go look at a list and you say, "Wait a minute, this is now 11 years old,"
Right.
you begin to realize that this is you use the term losing leverage, Nick, and I agree with you, Nick. That's true because as the old adage goes, justice delayed is justice denied. Well, in this case, enforcement delayed means somebody gets away with it. And the other folks can look at it and say, well, why didn't you do anything with him? And they'd be right. And, I think it's important for us to be consistent. I always felt that on everything we do as a commission, we should be consistent. We should operate impartially and fairly. And that includes enforcement. And I think, Mark, you've done a great job of getting us into, the point where we are taking a more active role in enforcement. I think, and it's not a slam on anyone else or before or the commissions before, but we were more focused on, the approval process and the permitting. And I think sometimes the enforcement, unless it was especially egregious, it took a back seat. And, we need to be accountable for every aspect of our jobs, which includes the enforcement. And I think we're on a path, and we've been on a path to do that. And some of the older stuff, instead of, it's like when the Richard remembers when they went to time standards for trials, all the court cases that got filed before time standards were told you get to the back of the line, which means they probably never got tried. So we're in that same boat here with our older enforcement actions. And I know it's hard to say, but we need to.
There's also another thing that everybody has to understand, and I'm not sure this is indicated on that spreadsheet. I'd have to go back and look. But a lot of the unresolved older cases are multidisciplinary cases where there is a wetland issue, there's a zoning issue, there's a Board of Health issue, and a lot of those, we used to have what they called problem property meetings in which we would discuss these. And they just kind of disappeared off the face of the earth. And this was with town council and all of the land use, departments, talking about what the status was. And I don't want to name, violators on the, this evening, but there have been several where I've gone out and I've said, well, you waited so long, the wetland issue kind of resolved itself. And so there was no punitive piece to it, but at the end of the day, you say, well, we ended up getting back what we wanted, even though it wasn't done actively. It's sort of just happened. Nature has a way of healing itself. There are a lot of those, but there's still outstanding issues, zoning or building or what have you. And that's complicated a lot of the older ones because a lot of them went to court. It's kind of out of our control and maybe in town council's control or maybe in somebody else's, control. So, what we're trying to do right now, and I can tell you that the health department, conservation, planning, and the building department and DPW are trying to work together. Like we have a case right now, which there are wetland violations out there, but the wetland violations are secondary to the overall land use. This piece of property was deemed non-developable, and it's a commercial site in the woods. Nobody saw it because nobody drives down these roads. These are back roads. You have to have a reason to go down there. We never saw them. We don't have the personnel. We don't have the field inspectors who are driving around town looking. Order of conditions by the same person on an adjacent site, but they've developed this other site. And, in my investigation, I, alerted Christine O'Grady at planning. I alerted Randy Bassett, the new building commissioner, and they're like, whoa, how did this happen? I don't know. I said, we can go after them for wetlands, but that's small potatoes. I mean, that satisfies us, but what are you gonna do,
I might make a suggestion based on what I'm hearing. If the matter has been turned over to town council, I would suggest we don't have to necessarily on our flow charts call it an open matter anymore. We've turned it over to town council. If town council succeeds in the case, great. If they don't, that means that the court's saying we disagree with the fact it's a violation or that, so it's over. I mean, at that point. And just because we didn't have them come in and do a restoration with approval from us doesn't mean that it's not closed. And if there's multi-discipline violations, but the wetlands issue has been satisfied, I'd close it on our account. It's been satisfied. So if the violation wasn't done by way of an order of conditions, but rather, as you said, nature heals itself, I'd still take it off the list. Nothing for us to do.
Well, I will tell you that particular site, it was one of the problem properties that we talked about for years. Mike O'Reilly was talking about it, and then he turned it over to me. We're still talking about it. I basically said to them, I said, the wetland issue has healed itself. I mean, I have no more input here. Now, if there's a zoning issue, and I believe there is a zoning issue based on my understanding of zoning and land use, that's not my problem anymore. I don't need to.
I agree with you, Mark. I'm not disagreeing. My point is, in that particular matter, that shouldn't be on our open matters. It's closed. Now, it may be on Randy Bassett's open matters, maybe on Christine O'Grady's open matters, maybe on Chris Michaud's open matters, but it's not on conservation's open matters, in my point.
I get it.
And that way, I think I might streamline our inquiry as to what matters we really should be focused on.
Well, I think if I can speak for staff, I mean, I think we're focused on stuff. I think we're not going to get them all done in the next 4 weeks, but we're knocking them off. So,
I agree with you there, Mark. This is not a.
I know.
This is a statement relative to what the Conservation Commission should be focused on. And if we have matters that are, let's say we got 20 matters, but 6 of them should have been closed, it means we really should only focus on 14. We could forget those 6. There's nothing left for us to do. and, then we can give direction of what we think is important with input from staff. We worked collaboratively here, okay? I mean, that's really the way it should be. But I in my view, if we have a chart and it's showing open matters that really nothing pertains to wetlands anymore, then it should be closed. It's not an open matter.
Mike, you and I think we're the oldest, or the longest, I should say, maybe the oldest.
We are probably the oldest too.
Yeah, it's the commissioners. But I have noticed, with no disrespect to Mike O'Reilly, whom I really like, but since Mark's tenure began, I think there's been a different approach to this type of problem, enforcement orders, and I think much more attention has been given them. This is my opinion. From their inception to their conclusion. It's just a different way it was handled, but I've noticed this. I think, Nate, I think you've noticed it since you've been here. We just handle it differently.
Agreed.
Yeah. I do think that it was a change in fundamental change in our philosophy about enforcement. Okay. And it became more of a priority, and Mark, I think you and staff, and you've been through a few staff, but you and staff have done a remarkable job of keeping control on these enforcement matters and getting many of them resolved.
So,
and I think that's the key. And to my way of thinking, that goes back to the issue of consistency. We really need to show that the Conservation Commission isn't your enemy, but if you disregard the rules, there'll be a consequence to pay. Okay, we're not going to let you get away with it just because, you'll come back to us later to beg forgiveness. There'll be a consequence. Mark, I think you're doing a great job. I think the staff.
Everybody understands, I can play the jerk anytime I want, and I'm very comfortable with that. But my approach to this is, it's not an excuse, it's not a defense on their part, but we've talked about people not knowing the rules and the regs. And my approach is first to say, look, there's a problem here. I'm offering you an opportunity to get yourself out of trouble. This is how you have to do it. If you want to fight about it, then we'll make this a little bit more serious and we'll involve other people. And for the most part, that has worked. I mean, we get the first meeting is confrontational, but we have the ability, and Jenna's done it, Adam's done it, I did it, I've done it, where we diffuse the situation, say, look, guys, it's a violation. There's no question here. Now, how do we fix it? How do we get to where everybody needs to be? And that's the approach we take. And it works for the most part. It doesn't work all the time, but that's what we do.
Mark, I'm in total agreement with that philosophy, and I think if people are rational, that's a presumption that I guess doesn't always hold. But if people are rational, you can solve most problems. There's always a solution if you're willing to work towards it, and I think that we always do. I think you have always done this. I think we as a commission have always espoused this. Hey, if you're willing to work towards the solution, we'll be part of that for you. We'll work with you. But if you want to tell me you didn't do it, or you're not responsible for it, and you're not going to do anything about it, then I got a problem. Okay, then I do have a problem. I'm not inclined to work with somebody who won't work with me. And I think as a commission, we've always offered that to them. Hey, listen, we're open to try to help you solve the problem, but you got to try to help us too by solving the problem.
Yep.
We're not going to do it for you, and we're not going to forgive you and say the regulations don't apply to you. You're special. No, they apply to you. In my world, they apply to everybody equally. Okay? And ignorance doesn't excuse you. Belligerency doesn't excuse you. Okay? There's really no excuse for non-compliance of the law. There's a simple path forward. If you start with the fact that there's an opportunity to get things done legally and permissibly, why didn't it get taken? And some people legitimately will come in with, I honestly didn't know, what do I have to do to fix the problem? And you can see how fast they fix the problem. And I believe those people were totally innocent of knowingly violating, but there's others that'll fight you tooth and nail. And the reason they'll fight you tooth and nail, it's very simple. Usually, to do things the right way, you have to spend money. And, it's like me. If I decided I want to remodel my house and I'm going to go put in my own bathroom, I'm not a plumber. It's illegal. It's not a legal addition or a remodel. I didn't get a building permit. Why didn't I get a building permit? Because I want to pay the money to get one. I know how to do this. I watch YouTube. Then they come to find out when they go to sell the house, or when somebody comes in to do some work and they see the illegal work, they got a big problem on their hands. Then they want the town to say, well, it's okay. We'll forgive you for doing that. We'll call it approved. No, rip the walls down. Let's see what the pipes look like, jackass. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
The rules apply to everybody.
And it is getting worse.
Yeah, I have someone, Mark, who may be emailing you in the coming days. She believes that there might be a violation with regards to an abutting paper street, I believe it's called.
Yeah.
Where somebody went ahead and paved overnight and did not file a notice of intent. So I did forward your email to her specifically. Just to give you a heads up, you may get an email. I don't know where the location is. I didn't ask for privacy reasons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we're seeing that. We're seeing that too. People assume that they own a paper street because they own halfway into it, but they don't realize that everybody on that paper street owns halfway into it, unless somebody can produce a legitimate instrument saying that they have ownership, a recordable instrument, and it's very ugly.
It is very ugly, and it's a thorn in the side of conveyancing attorneys as well. What you're talking about is an interpretation under statute of whether or not each individual lot owner under the derelict fee statute owns to the center line, extending their sidelines to the center line of the paper street. And if they do, then yes, they are the owner of that portion, but subject to the rights of everyone else to use it to pass and repass. And it usually doesn't become a major problem if what they do is improve the way paving could be improving, right? But in many cases, people decide that's where they're going to put their lawn ornamentation and the trees. And then somebody says, I'm going to chop your tree down and drive my big four-wheel drive truck right over your plants because I have the right to do that. And then all hell breaks loose. So it's never a good thing.
And we get pools, we get fences.
Absolutely.
Animal pens, and that does not provide the rite of passage.
No, it doesn't. So when you look at those things, I'm just telling you folks, those of you who might want to live on a paper street or private lane, just know your rights because they aren't the same as those of us that live on public ways. And not to mention the fact that most of your paper streets, at least the paved or the traveled portion is probably only a fraction of the actual paper street. Most are laid out as 40-foot wide. And even if you looked on your public roads, the best of them in Dartmouth are probably 21 feet wide of pavement, but it's a 40-foot layout. Mm-hmm. So a lot of things that people put in front of their homes, and it's on Old Westport Road, people have stone walls they put up on town property. And town is, in some cases, given them licenses to keep them there, but the town has the right at any point in time to renege on that license and say, take down your stone wall. Because you can't, and by the way, just as an FYI, individual landowners cannot get adverse possession rights against municipalities, the state, or the United States. So it doesn't matter how long your stone wall is there, it's still the town's property. Just an FYI. I know nobody cares, but you touched upon a subject that's a hot button topic.
So I will get the spreadsheet out to everybody, and Nat, on 801, we have a technical reviewers committee meeting coming up on the 25th. I will raise that issue because there'll be a lot of people in that room who have an interest in that. Just to make them aware that it's
Okay.
back up for, if anything changes, just keep me in the loop so I have something to report to them.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Alrighty, anyone else? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Seconded, roll call vote. Richard,
Yes.
Nat,
Yes.
Liz,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
I'm yes, that motion passes unanimously. The meeting is adjourned.